all who believe obey, and likewise all who obey will believe. So if someone's having a hard time believing, it might be because they're not obeying, they're disobedient. So they need to work on obeying God's commandments. On the contrary, if someone is having a hard time obeying, it's probably because they don't truly believe in the heart, right? They have a shallow belief. On one side, with Protestant theology, through saved by grace through faith, there is a strong regard for faith alone, that promotes salvation and grace from God. However, that can be misinterpreted and create an antinomianism, which thinks that people can remain in sin and God will forgive them in the future, and they just live a life of immorality and sin. On the other end of Catholicism, there's a practice of obedience, that obedience brings salvation and grace. And that is the case with the commandments. But if it's a man-made tradition, something that God did not command, anything that falls into human law or human tradition, as Jesus says, like washing hands and doing things outwardly instead of inwardly, that will go too far and not provide. So there is a delicate balance, though, between faith and obedience. For example, if someone is saying it's hard to believe, but they go and worship on Sunday every week and they just find it hard in their heart to actually believe, maybe it's because they are not obeying God's commands from God, not man-made tradition and commands, but from God. So in that case, the believer needs to work on obedience. Right? That disobedience is what is blinding the believer's heart from obtaining true faith. Whenever they have a hard time with one or the other, whether it's belief or obedience, it's usually the other one that is lacking. So if they have a hard time obeying, it's because their faith and belief is weak. But if they have a hard time believing, it's probably because their obedience is weak. So that's where they need to work. And together, faith and obedience is what produces the walk of a Christian, right? That Christian will walk the life of a Christian in the Christian walk. And that's that. A lot of it came from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I will link it in the bio. This is a great book by a German pastor who resisted the Nazi regime and was actually executed for resisting Adolf Hitler in Germany. He's a mostly Protestant pastor, but his name is Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and the book is called The Cost of Discipleship. Thank you all. Praise the Lord Jesus.